How are
Hi,
you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Just working. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm still in Michigan.
Yeah, it looks like I was gonna ask if you were still there.
Yeah, so still here for now. We are gonna head back, I think, next Wednesday.
Yeah. It's probably a nice place to be quarantined at because you probably actually get to go outside and not have to worry too much about being in the city.
Yeah, it is. It has been nice. But I already am like thinking about being back in the city and what I'm gonna do and how I'm gonna be able to keep up my nature time while I'm there.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we live by North Pond, like in
Oh yeah.
Lincoln Park area,
Hmm.
and they've already well, it's new, but they put there's like that little park there, right? And they actually ended up putting like a lot of like police barriers up because, well, I mean, the last couple times we've gone outside when it was nice, people were sitting on the lawn like with their dogs, and we're just like, we're you're not supposed to be doing this. So now they kind of force. So now we can't even go really walk in the park because people couldn't follow the rules.
That stinks. That
Mm,
stinks. Ugh.
so
How
we've
how are
been
you how are you have you guys how have you guys been holding up though?
Yeah, we've been good. I think it was funny because we were laughing. I was like, I think I'm starting to like lose it. Like today, I'm like starting to like lose it. But it's
Mhm.
just more so like, I don't know. It's just, you just feel like, I think, stuck now. Like it's starting to like hit me, but especially with like the parks and stuff being closed. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I've just been like meditating a lot and just kind of trying to take it easy. Like it's nice because now I feel like I have that ability whenever I do get anxious, I can just stop as long as I'm not on a call and go meditate really quick in my bedroom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
how
nice.
is Mitch? How's everything going with you two?
Yeah, we're good. It's kind of been like a little mini vacation for us, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so used to working on the
He works from
computer.
home anyways, right?
He doesn't work from home most days. He usually works from home on Fridays. And so
Okay.
now switching to every day, he's actually really liked it. So,
Yeah.
he's holding up okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it was good though. I know Dina signed the lease with the new place, so that's exciting. It's just I'm not sure. I guess we'll just have to see how things. It just seems silly to me if we were to open up in May to open for like 2 weeks and then shut down again
Yeah.
for like the move. So I don't know. We might not be going back in until we're like in the new space.
Yeah. That seems uh, more logical to do that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So we'll see.
we'll see. We'll
And how's
see.
Kyle?
He's good. He's keeping busy. I mean, they're obviously not able to work with clients, so they're kind of doing a lot of back end like business stuff right now. Like they have this app that they've been building
Hmm.
um,
Nice.
to like keep like workouts in, and I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do with it. I think it's going to just help organize the clients' workouts, and the clients might get a report or they might have access to it. But they've been kind of working on that. So still just trying to get things done that they've wanted to do, and now they have the time to do it.
Yeah. That's great.
So
Well, I
yeah,
won't keep you, but I would love to have you introduce yourself and just
yeah,
let everyone know who you are and what you do and the services that you provide.
yeah. So I am Faith. I am a nutritionist at Green Circle Wellness, and I am in my last semester of my master's in counseling psychology. So I'll be getting that this fall. I
Woo!
know, long time coming. Um, so right now, yeah, I do see both patients, nutrition and psychology. Nutrition at Green Circle Wellness, and then I see psychology clients at my internship. So I'm getting the clinical hours there. Um, So, I work with a lot of different people because of the diversity between the two places. I would say, at Green Circle, it's pretty diverse too, but I would say a lot of clients that I do work with are digestive issues, weight loss, energy is a big one, feeling tired, lack of concentration. That's a big one as well. But then people do come and see us just for general answers because they can't find answers anywhere else, which is pretty cool to be a part of that process.
Yeah.
And then at my internship site, where I'm getting my clinical hours, I'm mostly seeing younger adults. But the site does have a wide variety of demographics there. But me personally, I am right now just seeing like young adults with, again, a range of anxiety, individuals who have strained relationships with food, depression, past traumatic experiences, so dealing with trauma. And so just, again, a variety, it's nice to have that experience from as an intern.
Right. And what got you into what you're doing? How did you get on this career path?
Yeah, so to kind of break this story down, because so initially, so about from high school to I would say a couple of years ago, I was having daily panic attacks, literally daily. And I would put myself in and out of the ER. I would see several doctors. I also had like a history of depression, general anxiety. And where I grew up, like mental health wasn't recognized. There was no such thing as mental health. It's either you're the really crazy person or you're fine. Medications were always the answer growing up for me. And me and my now husband moved to Chicago about 6 years ago. It's been a while. And, panic attacks still were happening. And I didn't really know anything about like holistic integrative medicine or, that was just not even an option where I was raised, where I grew up. And I actually stumbled across this book, and I literally mean stumbled. I came across it. I stumbled on this woman. She is a holistic psychiatrist. Her name's Kelly Brogan.
Love her.
And yes, she literally changed my life. She wrote a book called A Mind of Your Own, where she essentially talks about how things like depression, she talks a lot about like women's health and how this can be related to food and just what's going on in the body. And so this was about 5 to 6 years ago when I stumbled across this book, and literally everyone thought I was crazy. Like when I would bring this up to like doctors or friends or family, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, your food is not affecting your anxiety. Like, what are you even saying? And so, I sought out a few functional medicine doctors here in Chicago, and I was very, I felt like I was shoved aside, like just drink chamomile tea, meditate, you'll be fine. It's just anxiety. I was still not given answers. So essentially what I did is I had to take matters into my own hands. I had to research, and I used this book as kind of the base of, my journey. I felt like no one was helping me. No one was hearing me. No one was listening to me. So, I found out through this journey with the right tools and the reputable sources and mentors such as Dr. Brogan, I essentially learned how to become somewhat of my own healer. Not saying doctors aren't necessary at all. I mean, I don't even think I need to defend that point. Like doctors are very much necessary, But, you know, I was able to connect with my body and understand my body in ways that I never even knew were possible, that have played a significant role in my healing process. And a big part of that was by changing my diet and understanding nutrition. So that's actually what got me into the nutrition field, because I was honestly like, this needs to be talked about. Like, this needs to be a known thing. And I added in, it took me a while to add therapy in, because again, it was something, I grew up in a very rural area. Like, we didn't even have a grocery store. We had to drive 25 minutes to go to the grocery store. So, you know, the fact that I was linking nutrition to my mental health was a big thing. And then adding in the psychology aspect, the fact that I was actually seeking out a therapist. Once I started actually meditating and seeing my own therapist, my healing and my mental health literally accelerated. So I saw that with the pairing of the two, and these aren't the only two things that play a role in your mental health, but I saw like, okay, this is what nutrition does by itself. And then this is what happens if you add, you know, a therapist, meditation, and the mental side of it. And I was just basically blown away. So that's kind of that's essentially why I'm here, is because I've seen from my own experience things that have happened, and because I know how frustrating it can be to when you're not heard, when you're not listened. And I wanted to essentially be able to help others become their own healers too, because I really do believe that everyone has that ability to do so.
Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful. And that's so empowering. And I just love that, Faith, because I really can resonate with that, because that is exactly how I've healed my ulcerative colitis. And what really got me into becoming a naturopathic doctor is really taking matters into my own hands and really using food as medicine. Right.
Yeah. And I'm hoping, it seems like things are starting to obviously change with more recognition of, you know, just looking at a person as a unit and how all these layers can impact, you know, several parts of us. So it seems like things are going in the right direction as far as healthcare goes, but we definitely have a long ways to go.
Right. I know we do, but that's wonderful. Really your story. And then I'm curious, when you started changing your nutrition, what did you start changing? Like, well, what were you eating before? And then what did you, I mean, if it's anything like my diet, it was super processed and loaded with, you know, crap. But I'm just curious, what were, you know, the initial changes?
Yeah. So, you know, growing up, it was a lot of, my mom was a single mom, so it was a lot of just frozen foods, easy to cook meals, and a lot of, you know, takeout, Olive Garden, Applebee's, you know, Buffalo Taco Bell. All of those places were like my staples. And so, you know, when I got to college, so when I got to my undergrad, I started turning to nutrition or started changing my habits because I wanted to, for aesthetic reasons. Even though I've always been a more slim person, in my mind, I was like, I always want to look like this way. It was just kind of me trying. So I started changing my diet, but not for the right reason. So then I shifted into like a low fat, high carb diet because that was the trend back then. And I actually even noticed that my mental health like got worse. Like I felt even worse because I was going to the extreme, right? I was completely cutting out a food group. And then once, it was not actually till we got to Chicago, because all throughout college, I didn't even know how to cook. I was like, all I knew how to make was like spaghetti and frozen pizza and enchiladas. Like, I'm not kidding. Those were my three things that I knew how to cook.
I mean, they sound good.
Yeah, I mean, they were. Yeah. And when we got to Chicago, after I read this book, I started to just do like little things, and it took me years to, I mean, because if you think about what I just named that I was eating to where I am now, it was definitely not an overnight process. One of the few things that I started doing was I cut out like drinking milk. Like that was something I did regularly, was drink milk. So like stopped buying cow's milk. So I would do little things like that. I changed my breakfast. So instead of like buying cereal or Quaker oats, I actually started making my breakfast. So I would make just like egg white muffins, or I switched to like oatmeal, or just like actual like oatmeal instead of like the quick oatmeal. I actually didn't cut out bread for a while. It took me a while to cut out bread, and I mean I still eat it, but like we were eating it like regularly.
Yeah.
So I would say dairy was the first thing that I cut out, and then like I would just do little things. Like we slowly stopped like buying like bread as a side, and we stopped buying like rice. And not because there's anything wrong with rice, but because I wanted to increase our vegetable intake. So instead of having a side of rice and a side of veggies and then meat, we had 2 sides of veggies and then the meat. So it was literally baby steps like that I started taking to get to where I am.
Okay, great. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, even for someone who's watching this who, you know, might be eating Taco Bell all the time, or Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, you know, just hearing that and understanding like, oh, making those small changes can make such a huge impact in how I'm feeling and my mood. And, you know, with that, what was the hardest part for you? Like in switching your diet?
Yeah. I would say the hardest part was, to be honest, I didn't think there was really too much that was too hard about it, because I never went to the extreme. So what I mean by that is because there are individuals who literally can't have gluten because of celiac and other digestive concerns, but I didn't have any of that, you know, and I don't have allergies. I don't have food allergies. I don't have really food intolerances either. And, you know, so I never saw a reason why do I need to go to the extreme, which I don't even, and that's how I practice too. Like, I don't tell people to completely cut things out if it's not absolutely necessary. And so I think that that's why it wasn't so hard for me to do. I think the hardest thing was just more habitual. And I think it was, well, what do I cook? So I think it was just more so like figuring out recipes that I liked, because it was like completely changed. So I think it was figuring out like recipes that I liked, enjoyed, were easy to make, you know, were actually satisfying. I think that was where more of like the trial and error was versus the actual transition, because like I said, I didn't do any of that extreme, you can never eat this again.
Okay. And then you had mentioned dairy, cutting out dairy first. Can you explain to someone who might be watching this, who drinks milk every day, who thinks it's healthy, can you explain to them why you would do that?
Yeah, so I did it because I was just going out on a whim, right? But for an individual, you know, there's a variety of things that could be happening when you consume dairy for individuals. I mean, for one, just how our dairy is processed in our country is a lot different. You know, with like in regards to the hormones that are added into the dairy, that are in the cows. So the processing of it in itself can cause negative effects on the body. But also, like, I believe it's the age 3, I think it's age 3 or younger. Don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere around age 3 where you actually stop producing digestive enzymes to break dairy down. So whenever you're eating dairy products, you're not breaking it down that well. And when dairy goes into the digestive system not broken down, what it does is it can then affect the gut flora, can start to disrupt the digestive system because it's not in that broken down state. Your body can actually produce antibodies against it because of this too. So that's another reason why it affects so many people. And it's like, everyone's degree of intensity is different, right? So for me, because I don't have a dairy allergy, a dairy intolerance, I'm not saying I won't get inflamed, because I will, but it won't be to the degree that someone who does have a dairy allergy or intolerance, right? So that's an important thing, is that we stop producing these enzymes. Also, if you do have a dairy allergy or intolerance, that's also going to impact your body's going to increase inflammation, which it's systemic inflammation, meaning it can literally impact anything in the body. And then the hormone effect. So the hormones that are put into the cows, the extra hormones, and I guess you could call them fake hormones, and how they can impact the body. Those are some of the three big things that I would tell someone why dairy isn't the best thing for us to consume in large amounts on a regular basis.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And then can you explain a little bit about the science of food, or around food? Like, why do we need it? Just a little bit more for people to understand why the kind of food we eat is so important.
Yeah, so, our systems literally cannot function without vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, amino acids. And literally the only vitamin the body can make on its own is vitamin D. The body can convert other things to vitamins, like the body can use tryptophan to make niacin, B3, but then again, you have to make sure you have enough tryptophan to do this. So, nutrition literally affects the way that our systems work, and then our systems then affect how our organs work, and then this affects how our cells work, and then this affects our gene expression. So, a body without proper nutrition, or nutrition at all, is like asking to build a house without any tools. So the nutrition, the vitamins, the minerals, these are the tools in order for our body to do its job efficiently and to keep us safe and to keep it properly functioning.
Great. Thank you. And then can you touch on the psychology of food, or explain psychology of food?
Yeah, so I could go down a rabbit hole on this, but
I'm all ears.
Some of the things that I think of is, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum on this. So when we look at like the emotional side of food and the emotional connection with food, a lot of people beat themselves up for having an emotional connection with food, which in reality, food actually brings people together. It always has, and it always will. It brings cultures together, it brings families together, it brings friends together. But when we have someone, so if we're looking at like this emotional side of the spectrum, and let's say someone goes to food, I guess if we're looking at psychology, with that emotional tie, so they turn to comfort foods, which look different to everyone. And this can be tied again back to the culture. It can be tied back to memories. It can be tied back to upbringing. So for example, if you have a bad day at work and you come home and you eat ice cream, this could be literally just because when you were a child, every time you cried, your father took you out for ice cream to make you feel better. So this is now like your emotional connection with something like ice cream. This is actually a result of your inability to emotionally regulate yourself. So, which, among other things, but there's also on this side of the spectrum, there's the addictive piece from a physiological standpoint, and how certain foods actually affect the brain the same way some drugs do. So for example, they're showing that things like sugar literally affect the same brain regions, the same regions of the brain as things like cocaine does. So that's another side of the spectrum from an emotional brain physiological side. On the other side of the spectrum, we then have individuals who use food as fuel approach, which individuals who simply just use food as fuel have completely taken the emotional aspect out of that relationship with food. When in reality, again, like that emotional aspect is not a bad thing. It's just we need to bring people more back to the center instead of being on these two very polar opposite ends of the spectrum. So the reason why people end up getting out of balance is it's just simply a symptom of something greater. So either this individual's trying to control, there's a physiological imbalance, there's too much restriction in other parts of your life, there's the inability to regulate emotions, and the list kind of goes on.
Wow,
there's also, from a thought pattern standpoint, people don't realize how thoughts can impact the food you're eating from a physiological standpoint. So for example, if we go back to that ice cream example, if you're feeling guilty about eating ice cream and you judge yourself for that, you have all these negative thoughts. The hypothalamus actually takes this negative input and initiates inhibitory responses in the digestive system, in the digestive organ.
Faith, if you can, tell people what the hypothalamus is, because people don't know that.
Yeah, so it's a part of the brain that regulates, it can regulate stress, it's kind of like the control center of the brain, essentially. The control center, it's like the principal in a way. So what this guy does is it sends those inhibitory signals, responses in the digestive organs, which means you'll be eating your ice cream and not even fully metabolizing it because these inhibitory signals are being sent. So this not only, let's say you're not eating ice cream, let's say you're eating something else, you know, and that could potentially prevent us from actually getting vitamins and nutrients. This can also affect our hunger levels because we're not metabolizing it all. So this could mess with the communication between your digestive system, certain hormones telling your brain like you're full or you're not full, which then can cause you to eat more of this particular item. It also can stay in your digestive system longer, which then diminishes healthy gut bacteria and can increase like toxin byproducts in the bloodstream. So these inhibitory signals in the nervous system, again, if let's say your goal is weight loss, another thing these inhibitory signals can do is they can decrease your calorie burning efficiency because of increased insulin and cortisol, which are stress hormones. Well, insulin's sugar, but it's produced with increased stress. So literally the thoughts that you eat instantly become a reality in your body through the nervous system. And, you know, we have other thought patterns like black or white thinking, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Just a quick example on that is if someone, again, if their goal is weight loss or changing eating habits in general, and let's say a birthday comes along, family comes in town, basically what happens is they end up thinking that they did worse than they were supposed to do. And then they end up beating themselves up because of that. And since they're beating themselves up and they have this black or white thinking that, well, I have to do this perfectly or I can't do it at all. And if in their mind, they've messed up way too bad to even be able to go back to home base, they essentially just kind of throw their hands in the air and go back to the habits that they were doing. And they can end up actually making things like weight gain, disruption in sleep. They can actually end up making these things happen all because of their thoughts. They end up actually making it happen. So there's a lot of intertwinement with psychology and food and where the root is, and there's a lot of pieces to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say would be the best way to start developing a better relationship with food?
Yeah, so I would say it really depends on what's underneath that. So is
Mhm.
it improving the thought patterns? Is it helping someone properly emotional regulate? Is it bringing you more in the center of that spectrum? So definitely finding out exactly what's going on, because I think, you know, the relationship with food is definitely not the end. That's not like the answer. That's just kind of like a product of what we're seeing. I
Mm.
think education is really important, to be honest. And I think simply having that connection with your body. So, like, helping change your thoughts from this is bad to maybe something like, my body simply doesn't digest dairy well, and that doesn't make it good or bad. My body just doesn't like it, and I can't blame myself for that. Just like you can't blame yourself for not liking the color pink. You can't blame yourself for your body not properly digesting dairy. So I think figuring the root of it, education, and then also helping to bring that connection back with your body, I think are all really good things, steps to take to start developing a better relationship with food.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I definitely agree. One of the things that I do is somatic therapy to help
Mm.
someone emotionally regulate, and kind of help them feel their body and be mindful when eating and digesting, all of that. Is there any other techniques that you'd recommend to kind of help with emotional regulation?
Whenever they're eating.
Mm-hmm. Like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So whenever people are eating to help digest their food, because, you know, if we're in this state of fight or flight, you know, your body doesn't understand that you're about to eat. So it doesn't produce stomach acid. It doesn't produce digestive enzymes. All of your energy is going towards your muscles, or, you know, for that to run from this perceived danger that you're experiencing. So what I usually tell people, to bring that connection back from a digestion standpoint, is literally before you sit down and eat, is taking like 3 deep breaths before even starting your meal, because that basically snaps your brain and is like, hey, over here, like digestion, look over here. It's almost like it's catching the body's attention, because it's initiating the vagus nerve, which is basically a rest and digest, puts you in a more rest and digest state. So that's something that I highly recommend. Another thing is, when people are eating, if they're able to do so, is to put your fork down in between your bites, because what that does is it allows you to just kind of kick back. It allows you to talk. You're not like shoveling food in your mouth. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually like allows you to rest, enjoy the company that you're sitting with, and chew your food, because you have enzymes in your saliva that actually help break carbohydrates down. So those are probably the 2 biggest behavioral aspects that take no time at all that I recommend for an emotional regulation, especially when it comes to better digestion.
Okay, great. Thank you. And for someone who may be watching who eats at night before bed, who's trying to stop, what would you recommend for that?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I would ask them. I would ask them, you know, what are you soothing yourself from?
Mm-hmm.
I would ask them, like, why they want to stop and what are the barriers that keep them from making this change. And then I would also kind of like assess their eating and their daily eating and daily activity level, because maybe they're not fueling themselves properly throughout the day, and you don't realize it because you're go, go, go. And once the body decreases that fight or flight hormone, once you're kind of settled down, all of a sudden the body realizes it's out of gas and it's been running on fumes all day. And then, you know, it's natural that you're going to come home and start, you know, eating whatever's in the pantry. So that's also something to kind of look at, is how are you fueling your body throughout the day? It could also literally be habitual, you know, again, going back to maybe growing up, your family always served like a dessert after eating, or a cultural thing. you know, habitual wise, I'm not sure it's that simple. Again, I feel like the reason why we're still doing that is because we have an emotional connection with that memory. But it doesn't hurt to look. But those are things that I would definitely talk about with the individual who would ask me this question.
Okay, great. Thank you. And do you have any tips for intermittent fasting? This is something that I work with patients with all the time, but I'd love to get your insight on this.
Yeah, so my overall tip for intermittent fasting is if you are hungry, if you're low energy, if you end up binging when it's time to eat, don't do it, or reassess and see if you're being too extreme, and always listen to your body. If intermittent fasting is working for you, things that I really, some tips that I really try to focus on is during the fasting period to make sure that you're hydrating, because it kind of defeats the purpose to fast and then just drink coffee all day during that fasting period, because then you're just dehydrating yourself.
Right.
Don't break your fast with a large meal is something that I have found to be helpful too. So whenever you do end up breaking your fast, have something small, like a smoothie, or, you know, just like a little snack, like a broth soup, or just something small and easy to digest. And then have the bigger meal shortly after, maybe like an hour and a half or something after. Depending on why you're intermittent fasting, a really one that I like to talk about too, because timing can be important. So if you're trying to do it to detox, I'll usually recommend for individuals to wait 3 hours after waking up to eat. And then same thing, try not to eat 3 hours within like going to bed, like give yourself 3 hours before going to bed, because that allows your liver to detox properly. But if we're looking at like a circadian rhythm aspect, I follow the Chinese medicine clock. So, which means eat by 8 a.m. and last meal should be between 5 and 7, which always isn't realistic. Another thing I really like that's really important to point out is because when people intermittent fast, they tend to drastically cut their calories. So I like to really emphasize we're still eating, unless they're doing a slight calorie deficit for like weight loss, we're still eating the same amount of calories, and to make sure that people are still fueling their body with nurturing choices, right?
Right.
And I don't really recommend intermittent fasting for those who have blood sugar dysregulation. So people who are, you know, really anxious, have a lot of stress going on in their lives, and then obviously individuals with things like really, you know, I would say unmanageable, like diabetes, things like that. So those are probably the biggest times I don't recommend it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then tips for someone who is trying to gain weight, and then also the opposite, someone who's trying to lose weight. What would you recommend? And I know it's all individual. I totally understand that. But any tips for the viewer?
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, this is a very like complex topic. It's not as easy as people think. So, you know, the general recommendations that people get are, why don't you just work out? Just count your macros, calories, eat more protein. If it were that easy, I feel like everyone would be able to meet their goals all the time. Something that I like to do, especially like if labs aren't in the picture, we don't have access to labs, is to start out by just observing your behaviors. So start out by observing your behaviors on 2 levels. The first level is what in my body is not working properly. So for example, like digestion, what's going on with digestion, what's going on with sleep, energy, my menstrual cycle, mental health, whatever it may be. Just simply look at and see what in your body is not properly functioning, because this can very much be a barrier to weight loss and weight gain, which I'll get to in a second. So overall, so that's kind of the first layer. The second layer is observing the basics. So what I mean by the basics are, how much water are we drinking? How much fresh fruit and veggies are we eating consistently every day? Not just like, oh, I had veggies 2 nights ago. No, like consistently, right?
Yeah.
how much of our food is processed? How many nights out of the week are we ordering takeout? How active am I? Like, how many times, like, you know, if you sit in an office all day and then go home and sit and relax, you know, it's just looking at our behaviors of what's happening. And then after like their resting metabolic rate has been properly assessed, then I might have them, sometimes I'll have people just track their food, because more often than not, people are either under eating or overeating than what they assume that they are. So I would just recommend to observe yourself on those two levels for a week and seeing where you can improve, especially with starting out with the basics. Weight gain is a bit trickier, and I've seen a lot of this tied to like malnutrition, so digestive dysfunction, or stress, emotional issues, but also again, like simply not eating enough to fuel the body, especially with individuals who have anxiety, individuals who are stressed out a lot, individuals who are using a lot of their resources or who are very physically active might not be eating enough, or might be kind of utilizing their resources at a much higher rate and need to refuel more often. So those are some of the tips that I like to start out with, is before you make just random changes that are like a shot in the dark, or because you saw it on Instagram, literally observe what your behaviors are and start with the basics and see if any changes can be made there first.
Yeah, that's great. Self-awareness is so key. I'm so happy you touched on that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you already had mentioned fruits, veggies, grains, whole foods. Anything else that you'd recommend during this time to support immunity?
Yeah, so exactly like you said, like obviously antioxidants, whole real foods, unprocessed as much as possible. Because with a lot of these processing agents, your body doesn't recognize them as food, which can then cause more stress and inflammation in the digestive system. But I have been also recommending like light, like let's go very light with our foods during this time, specifically just to allow our liver to detox. So, you know, not again that fat is bad. There's nothing wrong with fat. Our body needs it. But, you know, if we are constantly asking our liver to produce bio all day, you know, it's like we're starting to understaff our liver, like we're starting to overwork our liver. So during a time where we want it to focus on detoxing, playing a role in the immune system, aiding our lymphatic system, we really want to make sure that we're not overwhelming the liver. So something that, a little tip that I have done, not because of what's going on now, but for other reasons, is that I would start adding oils on after food is cooked. So for example, like instead of dousing my food and roasting, sauteing, you know, I will simply boil or steam my vegetables. And then I will put them in like a bowl or a Ziploc baggie. And then I'll add like half of a teaspoon of oil. And I'll use the same spices and herbs that I would have originally used, shake that bag up, add it to the plate, and it tastes the exact same. But what it does is it just significantly cuts down the oil usage, right? So it's just little things like that that I would recommend. I think now would be a good time to maybe properly practice intermittent fasting, especially if you're able to do so, like without blood sugar dysregulations, because again, that just aids your liver. And what it does too is it takes a lot of energy to digest food. People don't realize how much calories you're actually burning to digest food. And if all of our energy is focused on digesting food all day, because we're bored, going to the fridge every, you know, hour, whatever it may be, then that takes a lot of our energy away from things that are more important, like detoxing the immune system, cleaning up the body, getting rid of, you know, unhelpful cells, things like that. So that's another easy thing that people can do. Our digestive system is another big one to take care of, because a lot of our immune system is in our digestive tract. So some of my top foods for the digestive system are leafy greens, green bananas. They actually are resistant starch, so they help to feed the good gut bacteria. What I do with those guys is I will immediately peel them, and they're easy to find because no one wants them. but I'll immediately peel them and put them in the freezer, and they stay in that pre-ripe state, and you can just add it to like a smoothie or something. Same thing with potatoes. If you steam or boil them first and then let them cool for like 5 to 10 minutes, they actually become resistant starches. So again, feeds the good gut bacteria. Kefir is another good one, and things like bone broth are probably some of my top favorites. And then last thing, like herbs, some of my favorites that I selfishly don't want to say because they might be taken from the shelf now, but like the inside of an aloe vera leaf plant is something that's been used for thousands of years to help with viruses. So actually taking the inside of the aloe vera plant, scooping it out, putting it in a smoothie, soup, whatever it may be. Turkey tail mushrooms are also another one that's really good for immune system. And then there's some teas, like rose hip tea is very high in vitamin C. Licorice root is also really good for viral pathogens. And then fresh ginger is also another really good one.
Great. Yes, I
Yeah.
love it. And one thing that you had mentioned that I absolutely love that you mentioned, I just wrote a blog post called Plant-Based Eating Can Be Delicious and Immune Boosting. And in that blog post, it's my steamed vegetable recipe with olive oil all over it at the end. So we're totally aligned there in our thinking. And Mitch and I, we do that now with all food. We put olive oil or avocado oil at the end with some garlic and sea salt and seasoning.
It tastes so much better.
Yes.
You know, what we started doing too is like you can literally like buy a really expensive olive oil because you're using way less of it. And if you add it onto the food after, like the flavor is just like, it tastes so much better. It's not burnt into the food, and you're buying a higher degree of oil because you're using less.
Yes.
So yeah, it makes a big difference, and it's easy. It's an easy change.
I think so. And I was just doing some research on olive oil and the properties in olive oil when we don't cook it. I mean, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory. I mean, it's a superfood. And I think that just us cooking with it, we're really devaluing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really powerful change that you can make, that literally you just add the oil on after. You're still using it, you're using the spices, and boiling and steaming takes way less time.
It does.
So it's definitely like not, I would say, a pretty easy transition.
Yeah. And then any particular resources that you'd recommend for people to learn more about nutrition, or to help them if they have disordered eating or any of the issues that we've talked about?
Yeah, I have a lot. So I really, most of them are free, which is great.
Great.
I really like on your podcast app if you have an iPhone. If not, you can go to her website. Is a hypnotherapist / meditation teacher named Chel Hamilton, Chel Hamilton. She has amazing meditations, and they're like 10 minutes, not too time consuming, but she is great. She's a good one I would highly take advantage of. Some other things, if you really like, if we're looking from like a psychology standpoint, there's, I don't know her real name, but she goes under the holistic psychologist on Instagram.
Love her. She's the best.
Yes. Yeah, she's great. She posts, as you know, she posts a lot of like free tips in regards to like I know she posted one recently on how to reframe current events when it in regards to anxiety. So she posts a lot of like little tidbits that are really nice, and her community is just really nice. It's nice to be a part of and go through and read comments, and it's just it's a nice thing to be a part of. So she's great. There's also some Kelly Brogan, if you want to follow her stuff. She has podcasts, books, things like that. There's also some apps I would recommend. So, since we're all kind of quarantined and don't really have the opportunity to leave our house, you know, a couple days to go pick up something from the grocery store, there's these apps that allow you to make ingredients from things, or allow you to make recipes from ingredients that you have in your fridge.
Yeah.
And you can even say like, I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, I'm vegetarian, whatever it may be. But one of them is called Supercook. Another is All Recipes. And then the third one is CookPad. So you do have to go in and, you know, tell it what you have, but it comes up with recipes. Another really cool one is, it's an app called Smart Chef Substitution. And this one, when you are making recipes, say it calls for ginger and you're like, oh shoot, I don't have ginger. It gives you, it gives you substitutions for things that you don't have that have at least a little bit of a similar palette, so that you can still make that recipe. So it's cool to, those are really useful things, so that again, you're still able to make food, eat the way you want to eat, but not have to leave your house to go to the grocery store all the time when you're missing an ingredient or something. And then there are, I'm running free support groups at my clinic in regards to, you know, supporting individuals in current events. So that's another resource as well. And
where can they find that? Where can they go to get that?
Yeah, so if they were to, it's not listed on the website. If they were just to go to purehealthcenter.com, they could email someone or call someone, and then they could put them in contact with me. So that's another free option. All these things that I've said are free, except for the book, if you buy it from Kelly Brogan. So those are some things like just really good, like nutrition, you know, kind of psychology, mindset, resources that I have found helpful myself too.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Faith.
Yeah,
I really
thank
appreciate
you.
it. I think, you know, people can really use this information, and really, I think they need to use food as medicine now more than ever. So I'm so grateful that you have shared your wisdom with us. And I hope you have a wonderful night.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's always good talking to you. So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Have a great night. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.